Welcome to this edition of Wealth Without Borders. And I'm delighted to have with me today Edd and Cynthia Staton. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Howard.
We're happy to be here.
Great. And whereabouts are you today, and what's the weather like?
Well, we live in Cuenca, Ecuador, and the weather is the same every day. As the saying goes, if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour, and it changes. So every day is pretty much the same. We live close to the equator.
Yeah, it's winter for here technically.
Right.
So it's a bit cooler, but really, I mean, it's nothing like anybody that experiences normal seasons would think is any different, to tell you the truth.
Okay. And here in Shanghai, storm clouds are gathering, but we're not going to let that get us down. So the rules of the game are simple. I'm going to be asking 8 questions in 8 minutes. The title of today's podcast is How to Become a Successful Expat. And for those of you who don't know Edd and Cynthia, they're America's best-known experts on retiring abroad and expat living. They're the authors of 3 Amazon best-selling books, and they're creators of an online course called Retirement Reimagined. So, Edd and Cynthia, it's so great to have you here on the show. And are you ready for your 8 questions in 8 minutes?
Start the clock, Howard.
Okay, here we go. So question number 1, who is your ideal client?
Well, Howard, traditionally, our core client has been a baby boomer with insufficient retirement savings, or someone in that age group that's concerned that they're going to outlive their money. But now with so much more work being done remotely during coronavirus, we anticipate we're going to be reaching out to a younger demographic who would be interested in saving money and having an unforgettable adventure at the same time.
Yeah, COVID is changing everything. So 7 minutes 20 remaining. Number 2, what is the problem that you solve?
Well, we show baby boomers how to retire sooner rather than later with the money they have, how to live better for less, and how to even preserve their nest egg rather than depleting it by moving abroad.
Or even grow the nest egg, which seems impossible. It's really, moving abroad can be a trifecta of reducing your cost of living, upscaling your lifestyle, and growing your nest egg. I mean, where else would that be possible?
Fantastic. Well, we've got to talk after the show. Question number 3, with 6 minutes 35 remaining. What are the typical symptoms that people experience who have the retirement problems you solve?
Well, when you realize you don't have enough money, there's always going to be a great deal of fear, anxiety, frustration, I guess even confusion. I mean, it's unnerving to work hard your whole life and then discover that you may end up living in poverty when you thought this was going to be your golden years, right? You know, Howard, the seeds of this current retirement crisis, as it's called, were sown way back in the 60s when the first baby boomers were entering the workforce. I'm sure nobody really saw the future damage at the time, but the 401ks replacing pension plans at the same time that easy access to credit cards exploded. Well, it's turned out to be a lethal combination because millions of people were suddenly put in charge of managing their own financial future without any training. And let's face it, many have done a lousy job. So you combine that with the tech meltdown in 2000, the Great Recession of 2008, which is what caused us to move to Ecuador, and the current employment market crash, none of those things have helped the situation either.
Right. There is a massive crisis, not only in America, but really around the globe, and for those reasons. So 5 minutes remaining, folks. Question number 4. What are the common mistakes that people make when they're trying to solve this problem?
I'll take that one. The biggest mistake is actually doing nothing and hoping that somehow things are going to get better. The truth is, if you're over 50 and don't already have a sizable nest egg, you just really don't have enough time to accumulate enough savings for retirement. And for that reason, the second mistake is trying to follow the well-meaning advice of financial advisors, and they tell you to work until you're 70, and then even that to start collect. Even after that, start collecting your Social Security benefits much later than you're eligible. So even before the situation that we have today, there are so many people that aren't prepared for retirement, and they're going to be involuntarily unemployed, which is just going to compound the problem. So that would be the biggest mistakes, I think. And so truthfully, the situation is to actually think outside of the box. You've really got to come up with a different plan, which may include moving abroad to lower your cost of living, or start a new business, or do both like we've done.
You know what, Howard? Even before this crisis, a lot of people don't know this in regard to what Cynthia was saying about the experts were saying work until you're 70. Fully half of people over 50 find themselves out of a job prematurely for health reasons or being downsized or whatever. And of that group, would you believe that only 1 in 10 ever find employment again at the same pay level that they left?
Right.
So, like Cynthia said, what's going on now, the over 50 folks are going to be the ones that are going to get whacked the hardest as far as not being asked back to work. So a bad situation is really just going to get worse.
Right. Okay. Very good points. Only 2 minutes 30 left, folks.
I'm going to talk fast. Go. Hurry.
Question number 5. What's one valuable free action the audience can implement that will help them to solve that problem?
Okay, so if moving abroad is a possible solution to your retirement problem, what we advise is don't do what you think you should do, which is immediately jump on the internet and start looking at countries. This is a chance to actually literally make a fresh start in life. So it's best to first do an honest self-evaluation of what you want that life to look like. What do I mean by that? Well, how far do you want to be from family and friends? What's ideal weather mean to you? What's your health like, and what kind of health care needs do you have? What about your physical surroundings? Do you want to live in a big city ideally, or in a small town, or in a rural kind of a place? Do you want to be at the ocean? Do you want to be in the mountains? Once you've nailed all that down, then you're in a much better position to zero in on countries and the locations within those countries.
Okay, fantastic. 1 minute 20 remaining. What's one valuable free resource you can direct people to that will further help them with that problem?
Our website.
Okay, that's it. Brilliant. Okay.
We've designed it to provide a wealth of information on moving abroad, and because we've been featured in so many articles, we provide a lot of information on the subject, and our press page has over 50 entries to help you.
Yeah, fantastic. And we'll provide a link to that at the bottom of the podcast. 43 seconds, folks. Question 7. What concept, book, program, or talk was most impactful in your experience?
Okay, talking quickly. Well, shortly after we moved to Ecuador, we got to work with International Living, writing for their website and magazine and speaking at their conferences. When we were at those conferences, we were really struck by how many people were interested in doing this thing called moving abroad and how thirsty they were for knowledge about how to make that happen. So our experience during those years convinced us that we were kind of uniquely qualified to help make retiring abroad part of the national conversation. And in the case of this podcast, part of the international conversation.
Okay, fantastic. We're out of time, folks, but we covered 7 out of 8 questions. For the 8th question, to be answered, get in touch with Edd and Cynthia and ask them what question I should have asked them. Thank you so much. I know it's very tricky to answer all these complex questions really in such a short time. You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I will be definitely talking to you about the joys of Ecuador and other Latin American locations.
Well, the good news for you is you really got it all covered in 7.
There you go.
Thanks so much, Howard. We enjoyed it.
Thank you. Many thanks for checking out Wealth Without Borders podcast. I'd love you to head over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you'd be kind enough to do that, I would really appreciate it. And then if you want to know more about what I do, check out wealthwithoutborders.net.